The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming.
I really want to thank, everybody that's been listening. We didn't know if we were going to have one listener or 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, and people have really started taking a liking to the conversations we're having. And so thank you guys for listening, and especially the people commenting on Spotify. We have people writing us through Spotify and just giving encouragement, or they partially agree or they disagree. But yeah, I'm really excited for everybody that's tuning in. And so today we're going to talk. We felt the need to kind of put some boundaries and constructive limitations on what we're discussing, and we just wanted to put that on paper. And so we're calling this choosing your arena. And so we're going to just talk about the arenas we choose to play in and that we're choosing not to play in, and maybe some personal stories at the same time.
Yeah, it's been interesting because going back to what you said earlier about the inspiration along the way that we get from our community that we're building here. It's really, really cool when you see somebody go, it's about time, or I've been praying for this, or I am so happy someone's finally doing this. Mm-hmm. And what this is kind of a feed into what we're here to do a little bit, right? So we often trying to get people try to rope us into a conversation about debating politics or debating theology, or wanting to say, I want to know what your personal religious beliefs are. And so what would you say, this is?
The show?
Yeah.
Yeah, the show is let's call it a deconstruction of the institutional paradigm that is Western institutional religion. Yeah, we're deconstructing the institutional paradigm of religion, and that plays in the legal structures, that plays into the business structures of religion, that plays into the accountability and transparency practices. And the one thing that I'm really excited about that social media and everybody listening has helped us with is you've helped us refine our argument, or me refine my argument, or or the questions we pose, because we realize we don't want to talk about that, or we don't need to talk about that, or talking about that only clouds the issue that we're really trying to go after. And so this conversation today is really about defining our what is our purpose here with this show.
Yeah, and one of the big items is, and it's a lot, unpacking 3,500 years of history, right? Pre-Jesus on earth time, and how we got to where we're at today, and unpacking all that. And then you ask the question, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to you, Nathan, where we are at today in terms of what is the state? What does that landscape look like of where we are today? And I know that you obviously on the film side are going to have all that, but for our listeners right now, what is that? What is that arena today? What's that sandbox look like today
that we're trying to unpack?
Yeah, like for example, so we're saying we're unpacking all this history, and taking a look at the laws and the loopholes on how we got to where we are today from a donation standpoint. And I know that we've shared some of this data, but where we're at today is a world of taking it from the top.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So if you take the religious nonprofit sector in the U.S. As an organization or as an institution, it generates about $550 billion with a B dollars a year in individual giving.
Secular.
No, just the religious nonprofit space. Mm-hmm. But then globally, it generates about $890 billion a year globally. And so then you got to look at, okay, so the show looks at that. You got a 900 billion, almost to $1 trillion flushing through Christian organizations only. This does not include Jewish organizations, Muslim organizations, Buddhist, Hindu. This is strictly Christian. So you have 890 billion flowing through. And then we also look at the secular nonprofit, or just the nonprofit space as a whole. The nonprofit space as a whole generates about 540 billion in individual donor giving as well. So if you combine the 890 billion given to Christians, and we're very focused on this in the show, because this isn't all religious institutions. This is just Christianity. And this is where everybody's like, why are you focused on Christianity? Because I was raised Christian. My uncle's a missionary in Kiev, 32 years. My brothers work in ministry. My brother-in-law was a pastor. I volunteered in ministry most of my young life. So I understand the space. So the show comes at it from my perspective, which is I know the Christian world and I know the nonprofit world. So if you lump those two together, that's 1.42 trillion in individual giving dollars annually. That's almost 25% of the entire U.S. tax revenue annually. So you think about that, you go, whoa, a quarter of the main superpower on Earth's tax revenue floods into this sector every year, and there is little to no accountability or transparency or demand for, let's call it, educational material on actual impact of those dollars given. And so that's the snapshot, that is what we're looking at. We're saying there's so much money that flushes through this sector, and it's almost totally unregulated. So, okay, if we figured out, and so since it's totally unregulated, there's a multiplication factors of abuse, fraud, deception, inurement year over year. So as technology and modernity, like we always talk about, rapidly expands, so does the abuse and fraud within the sector, because there's new games people play. There's new little dirty loopholes that people play or find, and no one is there at the same time saying, hey, let's try to close these loopholes. And so the term in the show from a very, very well-known former chief counsel of the IRS is, he goes, the system's going to buckle on itself because there's just so much cash and resources pouring in and so little accountability. And so that's what the show's looking at. That is, we chose this arena to play in. Yeah. And so a good one is like, what's one that through social media that an arena that people wanted us to start playing in that you personally were like, I don't want to play in that?
There's a few, but I think one of them is they want us to go into the political debate landscape is one that I've often seen, and just people trying to say we need to get the IRS involved, and we need to, and then this is you're a if you believe in this, you're a Trump lover, or you believe in this, you're a Biden lover, and it's like, no, I don't. This isn't about it's not debating politics. There's something fundamentally wrong, and I think that if we can all agree that $890 billion comes in to the system on the religious side, and over $500 billion comes in on the secular side, and you've got $1.42 trillion, and there's little to no accountability, and 6% of that $890 billion gets stolen internally by church staff, and only 6% leaves the institutional walls for outside purposes. You just go, hey, I think we can all agree this isn't about politics. This is about a serious issue that we have. And I often
well, it's about let's say, would you say that issue is ethical stewardship of resources? Let's call it that. Is that a good,
They are not being stewarded properly in an ethical manner for sure. And I think we often say, and we like to use the terms, humans will human, and humans will constantly let everybody down. And so it's just give somebody $900 billion and you don't have to turn any type of paperwork in, and there's no accountability outside what you choose to show to your congregation, like humans will human.
Yeah, you used a big word there, choose. You know, these what I think a lot of churchgoers don't understand is when you see those financials that church puts in front of you, that is not the full snapshot. That is a selected snapshot.
It's a pie chart.
It's a pie chart. and that, you know, there's no bank accounts attached. There are no, or who knows, I'm sure there's a couple that do this, you know, and they'll give line itemized budgets.
You were saying that they choose because you've mentioned this on several occasions. We're taking a look at, like, they all play by the same set of rules.
Well, that's a big one. The good thing about, or the amazing thing about social media, it's almost an instant feedback loop on our potential viewer for the show, because they give us real-time feedback on it. So if we post something and they don't like it, they tell us. If we post something and they like it, you guys tell us. A awesome feedback that we got from our social media was people all would a big response is, yeah, the big churches play like that, but my small church doesn't. Mm-hmm. Or my dad, there's great people out there, but you know, my dad was a pastor all his life. He barely made ends meet. He worked 20 hours a day. He was died poor, touched so many lives, for sure. But those small churches play by the exact same rule book that the big churches play by. And when we went into the show, you know, and we started shooting a couple years ago, I thought that same way. I'm like, man, there's so many good small churches. There's so many good people that run small churches. It's not the church. So the people that run it are ethical, moral, and good. As soon as you have one bad player or one greedy player or one, God forbid, thief, move into that church, since they play by the same rules as the big boys, no accountability, no transparency, no legal document that they are held accountable to from a financial perspective, that small church can dissolve into a disaster as well. Yeah. And so it's, to your point, these small systems are based on the integrity of the leadership, which humans will human.
So going back to, like, when we were talking about, and thank you for, like, where we're at today, right? And we gave a little financial perspective and some statistics in unpacking to figure out how 3,500 years of history on how we got to where we're at today from a donation standpoint. And then you mentioned, you know, there's good players and there's bad players. And that's another thing that, you know, is in our arena, is identifying those that play well on both sides, right? You got a lot of, we've identified and exposed a lot of people who've completely taken advantage of the system, manipulated congregations.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, our chosen arena is we're looking at the big picture money side of it. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the big picture legal side of it and guideline side of it. And then we're looking at, like you said, those fringe players, that abuse the system that's in these loopholes the most. And then the players that are the best.
One of the most powerful things that we are doing and what our arena is, and it's cool on the social media side, we just started the platforms a few months ago. You know, going back to December, we had a combined like 400 followers between our two main platforms, Instagram and TikTok, and now we're 200K and growing. The people that are participating, it's a community, and it's awesome. And one of the beautiful things about the arena that we're playing in and what we're here to do is to continue to provide content, to continue to ask questions, to continue to put things out there that provide an opportunity for people to talk and have a conversation. And irregardless of what your religious belief is, your political belief, any of that, to participate. You don't have to agree with what we're saying. You can disagree, agree, whatever you want. But it's been really cool to see the comments and the messages. And the community is building. And I bet a lot of people would say that they were very uninformed, and they feel more informed now, right? Just wait till the show comes out. That's gonna knock everyone's socks off, right?
So here's a really cool insider bit for you guys listening. As a filmmaker, I'm terrified to always put unfinished content in front of people, strictly from a creative perspective, because I have my vision as a director, and I can see the bones of something laying on the table or laying in edit and see where it's going, because I live and breathe film. I've done it for 2 decades now, and so I'm always terrified to put material in front of people. So Chris, the show's EP, has never seen any footage of the show until today. He saw 25 minutes of the show.
Blown away.
And the reason why I bring this up is because, to your point of people being uninformed, our goal is to educate. And we've had a lot of people, especially in the last 72 hours on social media, be like, oh yeah, you guys are beating a dead horse. Education won't work. The problem's too big. And I sat there, and we've had quite a few comments like that. And it made me question myself for a second. I'm like, is education not enough? And it goes back to a podcast from last week, Peter Clark, where this guy was one of the leaders in helping end the AIDS crisis in Africa. And his whole campaign was education. But it's not just blanket education from a patriarchal sense or an authoritarian or an authority perspective. Yeah. It's education communicating to the right audience with the right material. And so that's where it's so crucial. And so that's where I don't think people are ready at all for what's coming down the pipeline in the show.
No, I mean, I'm very clearly involved with what we're doing here. And I consider myself fairly well educated in this compared to the average person. And I have, I've been on set with you, and I've seen stuff. We've been on calls, and wow, what I saw today was mind-blowing. It was you hyped it up to me. You did.
Yeah, got to pump it up.
Yeah, you were like, oh my gosh, when you see the intro to the show and all that. And I have so much trust and faith in what you do. And then when I saw it, I was like, it exceeded whatever you put out there. And that's a strong statement, because you were like, this is like how people win Oscars. Yeah.
Well, it's, I've been around the business a little bit, so I get it. But the team we had to build that intro, that visual effects intro, is incredible. And then we were just in Seattle this last week, filming a really big story. And you can call it God, you can call it serendipity, you can call it whatever is opening these doors for us.
Yeah.
From a story perspective, people are not going to be ready. And this rabbit hole is so much deeper than the average person thinks. And so from a community perspective, we love your feedback. And that's one of our chosen arenas, is social media and this community and our communities, because you guys need to know, Chris, myself, our social media agency, we are constantly reading those comments, and you're either getting a response from Chris, myself, or one of our social media reps. And there's only a couple of them that comment. And so what you say on there makes it to Chris and I usually.
Yeah, and for you out there that said I look like Gomer Pyle, I got to tell you, you hurt my feelings.
Someone said I looked like the devil. In that one video, I had my hair looked like horns or something. I was like, really? That's where you went?
Yeah, that's exactly. That's funny, man.
But so our chosen arenas, we are here to look at the business structure of organized religion and the nonprofit sector as a whole. We are here to build this community for a voice. We are here to, what else? Unpack 3,500 years of history.
Yeah.
And we're here to identify and investigate the good and bad players. And out of all of that, I think is going to come this huge potential educational sweep through congregants and through donors. And with our technology that we're building as well, we're building technology solutions for congregants and for donors that we're releasing to the world. And it's, hey, these force accountability, or not force, they encourage accountability in the system. And it's, we're hoping that based off that educational sweep, there's real reform within the nonprofit sector, because this is what Chris is so passionate about, or what you're so passionate about, is this idea that if you just steer X amount of money that's fraudulently stolen and abused back to creating real impact, the world could transform overnight.
Yeah, and when there's transparency and accountability and people that are stakeholders, they're really stakeholders.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you get call it a shareholders report or everything, like, you know what you're investing in. Yeah. And it should be no different. You know what you're like, if you are donating your money, yeah, it shouldn't just be a what does the statistics say? 3% people follow up after they donate money. And it's one of those things where you have to ask yourself the question, if a nonprofit were to solve a problem, let's just say the nonprofit is in cancer research let's just call it cancer research, right? Or world hunger. What happens if world hunger got solved? What would happen to those nonprofits?
They would dissolve.
They would dissolve. And so nonprofits, in a sense, should have a mindset, and the people should have a mindset that they are working towards dissolving that business, in a sense, that they are working themselves out of a job and on to solve the next global issue, perhaps. But if we're in this world where we don't want to truly solve a problem, but we want to donate enough money, and they are making some impact, and then they're able to market the impact and show the pictures of the kids getting fed. Yeah, they're making the impact. But what happens is it goes from donor to nonprofit, and then by the time that money, that dollar that you donate actually has an impact to the person eating, that dollar's been diluted down to pennies. And so they're making impact and they can market off of it, but do they truly want to solve the problem?
That's super interesting. I've never even heard you use that phrase, and I really like it. That a nonprofit's goal, it's brilliant. A nonprofit's goal and a donor's goal is to dissolve that nonprofit eventually.
Okay, so a very secure leader, the secure leader, is that somebody you want to work with, work for, same team. A secure leader, they should be working themselves out of a job. Because what happens when we don't work ourselves out of a job? We hoard information. We're so insecure about the positions that we hold that we withhold information from our own team. We don't share best practices because we're constantly worried about competition. And that's not a team thing. That's an I thing. And so it's no different in the nonprofit space. They should be working themselves out of the job because they need to. They came in to solve a problem, solve that problem, and go on and solve another problem.
That is such a powerful statement. That any business or any leader, his goal or her goal should be to work themselves out of a job. But what better industry?
What's the role as a shepherd?
Yeah, what better role than the not-profit sector than to want to work themselves out of a job? And so it's like that is the great. I think that line should be quoted and printed on a T-shirt. The goal of a nonprofit is to dissolve the nonprofit eventually. Yeah. Solve the problem. And to your point, what happens if cancer was cured? What happens if, deaths from malaria disappeared, deaths from tuberculosis disappeared? Those nonprofits would disappear as well, or they'd pivot. And so let's dissolve this crap. And so one thing that I was talking with John Freeman about is this idea of the warm glow. So development economists call it the warm glow. And this is why only 3% of donors ever follow up. Because donating is actually an active act of consumerism. And so what people think is when they give, they're like, oh, I'm being generous. You're being selfish.
Wow.
Because what you're doing is you're acting.
You're going to offend somebody.
I know. But when you give, it makes you feel good. And it's
100%.
called the warm glow effect. Here's the kicker. When you give, it's like a serotonin and dopamine kick.
Yeah.
Just like buying an article of clothing that you want or buying that car, donating that money gives you that dopamine.
That feel-good feeling.
That feel-good feeling. Here's the kicker, though. When you're only after the feel-good feeling or to check the box of giving, you don't care where the money goes. Why? Because you haven't identified with the purpose that money is supposed to be used for.
What would happen if you did?
If you well, that's the goal of giving. If you identify with the cause that you're giving to, or you identify with the need, then you care where every dollar goes, and you care that is milked to the bone to create impact. So this is the thing. Giving is an act of consumerism. It's selfish. Giving with the idea of identifying with the cause, where you identify yourself with that person in need. Which ironically, who said that? Jesus Christ. You know, he goes, you fed the hungry, I am the hungry. You clothed the naked, I am the naked. You know, it's the, I think it was Matthew 23 where that story takes place. And that's what he's talking about. He's saying identify with the groups in need. And if you identify with them and you give to that cause while identifying, you will care where that money goes. So,
yeah, and that's real, and that's how problems will get solved, because it's more than just a dollar. I mean, you want to talk about accountability. I want to go, if we're okay, I wanted to drop back a minute to what we were talking about the educational piece.
Yeah.
So when I first got into, I got injured in the Army in 2012. I got medically discharged 2013. And this was my second stint back in the corporate world. I had previously worked for Morgan Stanley. And I was just like, what am I going to do in the corporate world now? And so I figured I was going to go into management consulting, because I really wanted to learn how businesses are run. And the very first thing that you get taught, and this is the same thing with case studies. How do you solve a case study and everything? The as-is state. What is the current state? Well, that's education. The current state is education. It is how we got to where we're at today. It's what does today look like? And you can't solve what the problem is if you don't have the education behind it. Mm-hmm. How did we get to where it is? What are the root causes in the business world? Is it a revenue problem? Is it an expense problem? Is it both? Right? Mm. And understanding those things. And then the 2B side of it is where do we want to be? Where is it that we want to be? Well, all these nonprofits, everybody, whether religious or not, they're here to make an impact, a positive impact on the community and society. And so there is that 2B, but that 2B isn't being executed in a sense. And so like it's as is, where do we want to be? What is the implementation plan to get to where we want to be? And then implement, and then you're monitoring the then as is. And so when we're monitoring the as is, we're seeing a lot of problems that the film unpacks. Mm-hmm. And so where is it that we want to be? Well, I would say that from a standpoint of global impact, I would say more than 6 cents on the dollar should like leave the institutional walls. And when, that statistic's super interesting, Nathan, because it leaves the institutional walls, but then if you follow the continuous business model that we continue to unpack, I don't know that 6 cents actually makes it to the impact point. I
would bet less.
I bet you it's under 10% of the 6 cents.
I was going to say it's probably 1 cent of every dollar. Yeah. And that's in the show unpacks this for everyone listening. A lot of these big churches are just acquiring nonprofits, or not. They're folding nonprofits under their umbrella, and with something that we show in the show called Conventions and Associations of Churches, you can convert nonprofits into churches. And so your church now has a, let's call it a homeless outreach program. And then we also do stuff in Honduras or Africa. And so you fold these NGOs in. So all you're really doing is transferring money from one of your bank accounts to another. And then maybe that money that you've transferred over to the other bank account does trickle out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it does, but not all of it. So the church can say, oh, we've given $100,000 to this other cause. Well, they own the other cause. And so that $100,000 just transfers to their other bank account. And then they have organizational costs and operational costs there too. So maybe 20 cents or 20% of that $100,000 left. So really only 20 grand of that $100,000 even went to Impact. And then did it even make it down the value chain to that end beneficiary is the question. And so it's such a complicated space. It's like when you pull the thread, on the sweater, it just keeps coming, and you're like, when does this thing stop? And that's been my revelation is I'm like, God, please let it stop.
Yeah.
It keeps getting worse. And, we haven't hit bottom yet. That's for sure.
It reminds me of the movie Home Alone, right? Where he's pulling on the door handle, the bad guys, the sticky bandits, the wet bandits. They're pulling and the door handle's coming out and the rope, and then all of a sudden the tool chest comes through and smacks you. It's like, at what point are you going to get hit with the tool chest, right?
I'm waiting for that tool chest, man. But okay, so that's kind of so when we talk about the arena and what the arenas we choose to play in, like you and I think you have an amazing, brilliant business mind, and you look at those problem and solutions, and I'm a great problem finder.
Well, I'll say this, and I appreciate that. I think you're also I need to really, stop using that term because it lacks the confidence of the truth in which we are speaking. I believe that you are a very modest man, 2-time Emmy Award-winning filmmaking, and I think that here I go another thing. I believe that you were not even close to where you are at today when you received those Emmys. As a person, as a filmmaker, and everything.
Oh, that was just no.
And those are terrific accolades and all, but you are an extremely modest human being, and what you have created here in your vision and what you're executing along the lines of interviewing over 100 people, reading over 300 books. Well, you joked around. We're talking about that thread, that string that you're pulling. This isn't something that you can just do in a year. Nathan's been working on this for over a decade.
Yeah.
It is unreal.
So I was driving with my dad today, and we were talking about this is the perfect segue into what arenas we're not going to play in. Yeah. But I've never been able to, as a Christian, say Jesus Christ. So for you non-believers or atheists or agnostics, in the Bible, Christ says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father, the Creator, except through me. Mm-hmm. And I wrestled with that idea my whole life. And I told him, I'm like, I had a literal vision. And I can say that now. But it's not because any way that I've ever heard you, Dad, or any Christian articulate. And Christians won't like my answer. But I had this eye-popping experience, and this vision, this flash hit me, and it's not because happenstance. It's because I've spent a decade researching this, and I've been doing multiple passes on the Bible and the Apocrypha and books that are outside the Bible that once were in the Bible or were in certain Bibles around the world, and then I've read literature from atheists and theoretical physicists and, theologians and Reformation thought experts and historians. And I feel like my brain's about to pop. Like, that's what I told my dad. I'm like, I have so much rattling around in my head that I can't even articulate it anymore. And that's why I make the movie. But so that translates over the show. That translates over into this idea of what is not our arena.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Chris, what's one arena that, because when you first came on, you were gung ho to talk about everything, and so was I, and then we realized really quickly we're like, whoa, we gotta just keep out of some pools, so to speak, and politics are one of them, and we talked about that. What's another one?
Political, obviously we mentioned political beliefs, our own political beliefs or anyone else's political beliefs. We're not here to debate politics. the other big one is, and this is always the hardest one because we are, we're like our religious beliefs, and how does that is something that we're constantly asked. Are you a Christian? Are you a Christian? They want to know what angle we're coming in from, and it's coming at this from a standpoint of looking at the facts, the data, the real, and not trying to have blinders on by which faith or denomination you're in. It doesn't matter what faith or denomination I am or you are. We're coming at this from an aspect of what is the as is? How did we get to where we're at today? How did we get to the 890 billion?
Yeah, how did the nonprofit sector and then the religious nonprofit sector get to this?
How did it get to this today? And it doesn't matter whether you're a independent, Democrat, Republican, agnostic, atheist, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever one of the 45,000 denominations that exist today in Christianity, whichever one you are, it doesn't that's not what this is about. Unpacking 3,500 years of history and figuring out how the heck we got to where we're at today, where $890 billion comes in.
Yeah.
And
so one of our pools or arenas we're choosing not to play in is theology.
Yeah.
Like, we are not here to discuss your beliefs or our beliefs. We're here to discuss the business of religion and that nonprofit sector as a whole. So we're not here to discuss politics. We're not playing in that arena. We're not here to discuss theology or our personal beliefs or your personal beliefs. We respect it, whatever it is, and we'd like you to respect ours, whatever it is.
What about your zodiac sign?
What's that?
I'm an Aquarius, Nathan. Does that play a role in this?
Probably. That actually makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I know nothing about moon signs or whatever. I do think there's something to that, though. It's like, the moon, gravity is very real.
Yeah.
So we're not here to debate theology. We're not here to debate or dissect your belief or mine. Your belief is yours. Mine is mine. If anything, this journey has, this journey through this process has deepened my faith, whatever that is, and I'm sure it's deepened yours as well.
It has.
And what is faith? Faith, it's everybody's faith is different. And
yeah, I mean, by definition, what is the definition of faith? Is it believing in something that you can't see or touch?
Yeah.
And trusting in something you can't see or touch?
Well, a good example is like an atheist puts faith in their argument for atheism. Christians put faith in their argument for Christ and Christianity. A Muslim puts faith in Muhammad and Islam. And so it's faith. Everybody has faith. We just all steer it towards different end goals.
It's a really, really good point. It really it triggered a thought in my head. In our arena, defining the word church, is that within our arena? Is that something that you would define yourself personally? What does church mean?
Yeah, well, church, so again, we're not looking at it from a theological perspective. We're looking at it from a literal perspective, right? So if you want to, what we think is church today, I saw a great one on Instagram. This church posted a post, and it said, church plus you equals smiley face. And if you know where the word church came from, that statement is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Church plus you equals smiley face. And of course, they had a photo of their building, and they were talking about their Easter service coming up. And so we need to define church, because church, the definition of church is at the root of this problem. Mm-hmm. And so here's a great example. We're not here to debate theology. So what is church? Church anglicized from the Greek term ekklesia. So Christ, if you believe in Christ. So if you're a Christian, you always want to get closest to the source, which is your Lord and Savior, your quote unquote Lord and Savior, Christ. So Christ used the term ekklesia to define his people. And when you look at the word ekklesia, in Greek, it literally translates to a gathering. So a sporting event at the Colosseum would have been called an ecclesia, of a group of friends coming over to my house for Passover would have been called an ecclesia. So he used the term ecclesia to say, this is my gathering. These are my people. So Christ said the only thing that was his quote unquote church was his people gathering. And that's where he says, where two or more gathered in my name, I'll be there, break bread together. Like it's all about this gathering. Okay. So that we can define because it's not a theological exploration. It's a literal and verbal exploration. And, it's a translation exploration. So that will go down that rabbit hole. But when you look at what ecclesia means and then you map it over to a modern church, there's no correlation. Like you can't draw that line.
So he didn't say anything about beautiful landscaping.
The PA systems. Yeah, coffee carts, the donuts.
And the music production.
The music production.
Or angels flying from the ceiling?
Nope.
That wasn't in there?
That wasn't in the Bible, no.
Okay.
Or any of the early writings. But
did he charge people $50 a head to go to the Sermon on the Mount?
No.
No?
But he should have. That's what a modern Jesus would do for sure.
Absolutely.
But that's one exploration, right? So we're staying out of theology, but we go down a lot of those literal rabbit holes and translation rabbit holes because that's a lot of where the misinformation or almost what would you call it? It's like that's where the miss came from. Manipulation over the centuries. Yeah. But so to go back now. So now go back to that Instagram post. Church plus you equals smiley face. You are the church. That building is a nonprofit organization built on top of the church.
Yeah.
So it should really be the building plus church equals smiley face, not church plus the building. And so that's how backwards people's understanding of.
Yeah, but the person who did that billboard, from what you and I've seen, have had a hard time answering the question, what is a church?
Oh, they can't answer it because their argument dissolves in front of them as soon as they take a biblical approach, as soon as they take their literal doctrine, their books, and apply the proper translation to that, their whole argument falls apart for their system.
Yeah. And one thing that I think we all have an inner critic in us.
For sure.
And I've even thought about this over the time here. Part of what we're unpacking in the film is like the different variations and translations, right? You have gone through numerous Bibles of different times. That's not debating theology. You are using factual data. Like you are presenting different translations that have different meanings based off of like the era of which a Bible was translated.
Correct. Yeah.
Produced.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's like I was talking to my dad as we were driving today through the country, like side in Texas. We were going to pick up a cow. I bought a cow.
Yeah.
Well, my brother, sister, and I bought a cow, grass-fed, grass-finished cow out here in Texas. And so we were driving out there to pick up the cow, and we were just talking about that. And
that's another thing we're not here to do. We're not here to talk about whether you're
dietary restrictions. Yeah. I eat red meat. But that's what's fun is I told my dad, I'm like, for the first time in my life, my faith is my own.
Hey.
And we got a dog standing here. His name's Charlie.
What's up, Charlie?
He's got the longest eyelashes. They're probably 2.5 inches. But yeah, so if you look at it, it's like my faith has become my own for the first time ever. And me questioning the books or questioning my belief or questioning the beliefs I was raised in or the construct of beliefs I was raised in has actually deepened my faith. But I see pastors, or I see a lot of church leadership, and then I also see a lot of Christians that are scared to question their belief structure because what happens when you question your belief structure? If you don't have answers,
it's scary.
It's scary.
It's very scary. It's very scary, right? It's something you want to turn away from. So we were talking about like the do's and the don'ts in kind of wrapping this up. Conclusion. Do you have a personal like arena you won't play in yourself? Like any like no's in your life on a personal level?
Ooh, drugs probably.
Yeah.
Like I used to, like in my 20s, I played around with drugs, and it's just something that doesn't better my life, you know. It's yeah, and I just drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you know,
Appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that.
yeah. There's things that I know, you know, there's arenas that I have to be very careful in. One's alcohol,
Yeah.
you know, and then another's social media. Yeah. You know, it's like the social media side of things, it wears on me. It's not like an out of control thing, but it's just
It could
like
be soul sucking.
yeah, soul sucking for sure. And then I don't like from a personal social media standpoint, like I had a decent following in my 20s, and I just deleted all my social media back in the day. And it was partially because I was creating content not for myself but for other people, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm actually like creating and curating images of my life and my work or whatever for people I don't even know, hoping for a like, you know, and so social media.
And your identity, so much of your identity was based upon other people's opinions and thoughts and how much they liked.
100%.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten back into it. You know, this
easy
show demanded me to get back into it. And so now I just know there's guardrails I have to set up for that. There's guardrails I have to set up for that. And then alcohol. You know, alcohol's always been I like to have fun, you know. And so I like to enjoy life. I like to experience things. And so, yeah, I just have guardrails with alcohol now. But I would say the big arena I won't play in is drugs.
Yeah.
And, yeah. What about you?
Alcohol is one that I don't play in. I've been sober from alcohol for just a little under 4 years.
Wow.
And just in my experience with it, 9 out of 10 times, I was perfectly fine with just having a drink or two. But my personality, if something feels good, I want more of it. Mm-hmm. If something tastes good, I want more of it. And alcohol did. It made me feel good. It made me feel a little more alive. And I would just go from, I'm only going to have 2 to now I'm going to have 2 Crown and Cokes. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to have 2 big Crown and Cokes. And then if that's not enough, I'm going to have 2 big scotches. And then next thing you know, at that point, I didn't care if it was 2, it was 3, 4, 5. And then that 1 out of 10 times and such like that, I didn't like who I became. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I had to make a decision whether or not I wanted to give it up completely or not and get out of that arena. And for me, it's a hard no. Like it's not even something that's a consideration for me. Another thing too is being in a combat sports athlete. Like I'd go drink and then the next day, like it was terrible.
Yeah.
Like getting choked out by somebody after you had a night out. Not fun. And you just realize quickly, or getting hit in the liver.
Yeah.
Not fun. But yeah, so that's a big hard no for me. It's not something that I could just dab in. Porn's another one. It's not something that I'm like, hey, a little bit's okay, right?
Yeah.
You know, you hear people say a little bit's okay, and for me, it's like no, like it's an all or nothing thing.
Yeah.
So I have to have. It's a yes or no boundary.
Yeah.
It's an absolute, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with like THC. It's, you know, so alcohol, THC, those are all things that like I've enjoyed. Same thing with pornography, and they're just things that like I can't let enter into my life. THC, and I like you know, getting the debate about it. It's great. I mean, it absolutely like takes your mind away from problems that you have. But what it prevented me from doing was actually working on myself.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to work on yourself and actually deal with your demons and all that. So,
well, if we can say anything, it sounds like you and I are both broken individuals that are,
broken.
You know, that are by the grace of whoever, by the grace of God, sitting here and being used. I firmly believe we're being used for, you know, we're being vessels to be used for something. And
Absolutely.
so
And
I don't know what words of encouragement could today's podcast was about choose your arena, and so we've chosen our arenas on how we're talking to our audiences, what we're presenting, we're choosing what we're gonna do, and is just importantly we're choosing what we're not gonna do.
yeah.
So what words of encouragement could you give?
No, don't be. This isn't about dissuading people of their beliefs. Whatever your beliefs are in system, they're beautiful beliefs that you have. And I'm not here, and you're not here. I'm asking to really take your cap off and take a look around, step into that arena, and really look at the facts and the data, and question. Because if you truly, really love and care about something, just like your family, just like your friends, a good friend's going to question another good friend.
Yeah.
They're not going to just sit there and watch. I just shared with you what like my don'ts were. I just did. And if I were to go, hey, Nate, will you pour me a drink of scotch? You should be like, no, man, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. If a nonprofit stands up there and a church stands up there and talks about what they're about, and they're about this global impact and spreading the gospel and everything, look at the facts and the data. And if that's not in line with it, you should be asking some pretty tough questions. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you misalign with your beliefs. It actually is aligned 100% with your beliefs. So it's step into the arena, get out of your comfort zone, and this community we're building got your back.
I love it. Yeah, and if I could give one shout out to pastors in general, we are all broken, and I feel like pastors have had to carry this facade that they're like these good shepherds, they're perfect, and we're all flawed humans.
Yeah.
And so pastors, I would argue, have kind of dug themselves into this hole, but they have to be these beacons of perfection. And so my encouragement is, hey, pastors, we are going to expose a lot of bad players here and a lot of good players. But we're going to round trip back to the beginning of this episode. You all play in the same system. So we would love you to come on this docuseries and say, hey, sure, we were born into this system. We were raised in this system. We play in this system. We want to be agents for change. We want to get into this arena with these guys and with you guys and be advocates for accountability and transparency. And we would love to have you on our docuseries. We'd love to have you in this show. You can, I would love.
We'd love to podcast with you.
We'd love to podcast with you. And I know that there are pastors all over the U.S. that have been feeling this, and that they know the problem. They just oftentimes feel like they're just a cog in the system. They're a small part in the system, and they can't do anything to change it. And you can. So that's my encouragement: is come into the arena with us. Join us. You guys are broken, just like we are. We're all broken shepherds. Let's call it that. Broken shepherds. And it's like, join us. And we'd love to have you in the show or on this podcast and be a part of change.
Let's do it.
So love you, Chris.
Love you too, brother.
Sweet. Have a good one, guys.
Who had the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory